Again, good morning. Good to see all of you.
Good to see you.
It's been since February of 2020 since I've celebrated the Eucharist. And the last time I did that was right here, but inside.
Yes.
So today it's for me a bit of a bookend of at the beginning of pandemic, or just before I was here, and we are hopefully toward the end of pandemic, or at least learning how to live in pandemic. And it's a nice bookmark for me, honestly, to be with you again at this time, doing something that I've missed doing, that has been central to my life and central to a lot of our lives. And so I know you folks have been celebrating recently at the seminary. We haven't yet because we're not in session yet. We start in a couple of weeks and are going to be back in chapel again in person. And that's exciting and nerve-wracking from an operational standpoint about how do we keep each other safe and still do these things. But at the same time, it's a lovely bookend to be with you. And in particular because of this gospel we have today. This gospel we have today that has some turning off language, perhaps, because it has to do with, it brings up images of cannibalism. There's some exclusionary language that's used that seems to grate on our nerves. But this particular chapter of the Gospel of John and these verses, this is the institution of our Eucharist. This is the root of where our Eucharist comes from. And although this language may be a turnoff about eating flesh and drinking blood, maybe a turnoff, it could be a turnoff. We have to understand the context of where that's coming from. See, John is doing something very deliberate for us, doing something very deliberate in his choice of language. He is talking to people who would understand not only from their Hebrew past, but in the culture at large. The belief was that if an animal was sacrificed, killed, and a small piece of that animal and some blood was burned and offered to the small g god, that small g god infused the remainder of that animal. And then when people ate or consumed that animal, the small g god entered the individual and helped suffuse them with the power of that small g god, or the influence of that small g god. Jesus is trying to take that understanding and change it. And have people focus on him. So in this Gospel of John, Jesus knows who he is from day one. Unlike Luke, where Jesus has sort of a developmental relationship with his understanding of where he's going and what's happening, Jesus knows from day one he's the divine one. And so what he's trying to do is take that idea of the small g god infusing people by consuming them and changing them, and say, don't believe in the small g god, believe in me, the living and present God. And that's a key phrase in the Gospel of John, the living presence of Jesus among us. So you see where our Eucharist it is so deeply rooted in not only Jesus trying to change their understanding, but it goes way back in history. So there's deep roots in this Eucharistic prayer and this idea of having flesh and blood change us, be with us. This exclusionary idea. There's some exclusionary language in this gospel passage. You have to remember who John was writing to. John was writing to an insiders group. and an insiders group who had been shunted aside by the larger group. And this gospel writer we call John is trying to buttress up and support this insider group, to give them the confidence to continue to believe in Jesus and to spread the good news about Jesus. This is all really good stuff.
Okay.
All really good context.
If you say so.
What does it have to do with us now? This is 2,000 years ago. This is 2,000 years ago all this was going on. So what does this mean? What does this mean to us? You know, it may sound trite. This may sound trite. It may sound too simple. But I really believe this gospel is about life and community being important and being central and a gift to us, not to be taken for granted. If anything, in this last year and a half of pandemic life, I think I've taken away the gift of being in relationship with people, of being able to be with people, of not just saying hi on Zoom, hi on Facebook, being with people in community is really important to us, not only as human beings, but as Christians, as followers of Jesus. So this idea of a living and present Jesus is infused into us by participating around a common table and a common meal. It gives us strength as a community to do what we heard last week in our gospel, to do that which is right. That's what I think, again, it might sound trite, but it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to lose sight of. What does it mean to do that which is right? We're all humans. We all have emotions. We all have temperaments and tempers. And in particular, in times of stress. And the last year and a half is, stress at, level 10. How do we take a step back from that and remember to do that which is right and to follow Jesus? So this Eucharistic prayer, the central celebratory thing we do by having this Eucharistic meal, we're not just remembering Jesus. We're not just celebrating Jesus. And if we are remembering and celebrating the whole of Jesus, all of Jesus, not just his death on the cross, not just his resurrection, not just his life and ministry and work. It's all of it. And a way to think about what that means is when we love somebody. When we love somebody, we don't love a piece of them. When we truly love them, we love all of them. We love the whole of them. That's what this Eucharistic meal means. That's what this institution of the Eucharist, this passage in the Gospel of John does. It's meant to, Jesus is saying, remember all of this. Don't get stuck at the cross. Move on to the resurrection, but remember the life and work and mimic me, all of me. To do that which is right. To do that which is right is what we're called to do. This interesting Gospel of John, chapter 6, is where we are right now. This is really a summary of the last 5 chapters, and actually the repetitive bread of life metaphor that we've heard over and over and over again these last few weeks in these gospel readings we've had. John does that purposefully. He's setting up this chapter 6 right now. We have Jesus feeding the 5,000, Jesus walking on water. We have, I'm going to put them out of order. He says 3 weeks ago, the first, I am the bread of life. Last week we heard, I am the bread of life that came down from heaven. And today we hear, eat my flesh, drink my blood. There's a methodology that Gospel of John is putting together for us to say, here's the central piece. center around here. This is where you'll find your strength. This is where you'll be able to go out into the world and mimic me, mimic this divine Jesus in the world. So, again, this may sound trite, besides the idea of life and community being a gift. But in this really short life that we have, how do we make our work, our deeds, our life help change the world and take that step closer to making this kingdom of love that Jesus was proclaiming? That's what we're asked to do in this gospel. That's what we're asked to do every week by this Eucharist. Is how do we focus ourselves to do that which is right? And it's the little things in my mind. It's in our each and individual contexts, our home life, the small community that we might have around us in our home and around our home. It's this community. It's the Diocese of California. It's CDSP, where I work. It's where can we change how we act or do something to assist those who need us to assist? Think about who Jesus helped. The poor, the needy, the unhoused. We do a great job here at St. John's helping all of those people. We need to be reminded that we have to continue, in particular at this toward the end of this pandemic season, we need to continue to reach out to those who are in need and help them and be with them and be in relationship with them. We're not there to fix them. We're there to be in relationship with them and walk with them as they also try to figure out how do we move forward? How do we become better people? So that's my prayer for us today. Is this Eucharist today that hopefully I will not cry at. That's it. Praying. That it helps center all of us to make that difference in our world, our little world or our larger community. Whatever step we can take. It's a joy to see all.